if you are here to talk about something that's on the agenda, just wait until it comes up, and then we'll take it up then. But I want to thank you all for coming. Council's always glad when there's citizens here, and we appreciate your being here. Okay, I will entertain a motion to adjourn from executive session. Second. It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. And at this time, I invite you, if you would like to join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Can I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second. It's been moved and seconded. Any additions or changes? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. And now we get to public participation. So anyone wishing to address council about items that are not on the agenda, or if they're on the consent agenda, please come forward at this time and give us your name and address, and we'll give you 5 minutes. So anyone wish to speak? Anne, you can start. where council will talk about issues like that, so it's very timely that you brought it up. Would anyone else wish to address council? Yeah, come on up.
Eradicating, thank you. Oh, there we go. I'm usually too short for everything. Is that better? All right. I'm here to speak on behalf of OCPJ, Oxford Citizens for Peace and Justice, and in support of Ann Bailey and the Eradicating Systemic Poverty and Affordable Housing Group. And I'm here to call for a moral, commitment to the homeless in our city. 2 years ago, some of you will remember, OCPJ came to City Council asking for its help and commitment to a cold shelter. It was near the first of the year. Funds and organization were lacking, and people were cold and unhoused. OCPJ conducted a really quick fundraising campaign and worked with the Family Resource Center to house homeless individuals and families for the winter. We raised more than $14,000 over the span of a few weeks. We were clear this action was not a sustainable way forward, only a one-time patch. And we welcomed collaboration with the city government to get this done. Yet here we are again. There is now no clarity about how or if there will be a cold shelter this year, and the city has not yet made plans for a sustainable way to house folks throughout a year. We hoped for something different. So, we've been working on it again. In November, we'll have a retreat to address homelessness in Oxford. In the spring, we've been asked to offer an Institute for Learning and Retirement course also on homelessness in Oxford. Last week, at our city council meeting, after an entreaty by our organization's facilitator and Fuhrer, Councillor Ragu discussed a successful and movable facility for the homeless population that she visited in Denver. We were and are intrigued. Some of us Oxford citizens gathered to discuss the possibility of such a facility being established in Oxford. And we believed that in the likelihood that such a place could be created in reasonably short order and at a relatively small cost. We are thinking of a pilot program. Being people of our generation, we're calling it MASH, Mobile Accommodations and Services Hostel. A hostel, not so popular in the United States, but popular across the world, is an establishment which provides inexpensive food for a specific group of people who are in transition. Thus, our MASH in Oxford.
You got a minute.
We think, we plan, as a consequence of our various involvements in other group organizations like ILR and so on, we plan to join with more Oxford citizens, and we hope with local government, to develop a concrete plan that will help us extract ourselves from the limbo that we seem to now inhabit. Please. This will take the political will to do the right and compassionate thing. We have energy. We have ability. We ask you to have the will.
Thank you very much. Would anyone else like to address council? Wendy, did you, okay?
Same topic?
You can talk on anything you want. We're here to listen.
Well, public speaking is not at all my forte. My name is Wendy Richardson. I'm an ancient Oxford resident and have been here for 50 years or something. I would like to be a little bit dramatic and ask you to imagine with me what just occurred to me last Saturday afternoon about 5 o'clock. I have, as part of my being a craft person at the Community Arts Center, I have a couple of storage units out at hometown rentals. Imagine, if you will, you pulled your car up to your storage unit, left the lights on, took your keys out because you needed it to unlock the unit so that you could get in there to get something that you were going to do crafts with. You walked into the storage unit approximately a yard and a half, and the door on the unit slammed closed on you on this Saturday afternoon at 5 o'clock. And there was no bleeping way to get out of there. Fortunately for me and my incompetence, I had left my headlights on. However, I sat in the unit next to the door. This was a 10-foot unit. Next to the door, randomly pounding on the outside of the door. I finally thought, how clever if I did 9 pounds and did a pause and then did a 1 and a 1. Believe me, that does not work. But I was just bored with hammering on. However, I had failed to turn the lights off in my car. So about 2.5 to 3 hours into this, thank God for a person named Scott Smith, who is a guardian angel. He saw my headlights on and came to this unit, found this unit, hammered on the door, and was able to pull the door up and get me out of there. Otherwise, I would not be standing here talking to you today. Now, somebody told me it takes about 5 days to die of no food and no drink. So but anyway, so I'm going to try to persuade you guys. I don't know what's appropriate to bring to City Council, but I think if I had been a college student at Miami University and told this tale to my parents, I think we would have all been very upset. I mean, I'm 900 years old, and it's not going to matter that much. But so the bottom line is that the unit on the inside was somehow I could not push the door up from the inside. It was basically broken, and I don't know how to describe how. And so I'm simply here to ask City Council to take some sort of look into this. I guess maybe somebody named Dennis Day, I think he's gone, no longer around, but his family who owns this place. Anyway, I'm simply asking City Council to look into this, because I think it would be personally disastrous to me and rather bad PR for the city of Oxford.
Okay. Thank you,
Thanks.
Wendy. Appreciate it, and we'll have
Ms.
staff look
Richardson,
into it.
can I get your address, please?
Okay, oh, my address. 6135 Fairfield Road, number 12, here in Oxford.
Thank you.
Thank you. Not the storage unit.
Would anyone else wish to address council tonight? Yes, come on forward.
Hey, I'm Carissa Schnell. I live at 6 Old Stone Court here in Oxford. It's good to see everybody. I'm sorry I missed a couple weeks ago. Had no idea you guys were going to have such a crowd. Usually Stephen and I are in the back and we're kind of loners, so it's nice to see you guys have some good turnouts. And I really did appreciate the discussions, or at least the comments, I guess, that were made. I think it was good to hear both sides of a very sensitive topic. But I wish we could have had that conversation before you guys started or enacted a resolution and voted on it. Because if you're representing the community, I really do feel that getting input from everybody, and clearly there was a big turnout a couple weeks ago, that you didn't get that. Or maybe I didn't get the memo on the living room conversation this time. Because I keep hearing a lot about living room conversations for like the last 2 years, but I haven't really seen that enacted yet, and I hope it happens because I think our community needs it. I've been saying it for the past year and a half since I've been here, right? That we need to find ways to bring this community together rather than pull something that is a national, and I get a state topic, and then bring that divisiveness right here to the local level. And I think that there were some really great points, really, on both sides. You know, I talk with my students all the time about seeing both sides of a debate, analyzing it, getting all information, and then making your decision. And I truly do wish that you guys would have taken that to heart a little bit. Because I get the impression that it's more about what's happening in your own political bubble rather than what's happening across the spectrum, right? And I say that completely with libertarian views, that, you know, I'm not a down the ticket voter. There's many things, Mr. Bracken, that I think that are great that you're doing in this community. And I actually am looking forward to what you have coming up on the agenda with the environmental concerns. Okay, but I've also seen the city council spend so much time talking about styrofoam in the landfills and debating and making sure really pushing what can we do to keep styrofoam out of the landfills, which all about it, 100%. But so quickly come to a decision that a baby can go into the trash without any concern. None, you know, and I appreciate, like, Mr. Snavely, your comments about being a grandfather, right? I totally get that. As a mom, absolutely get it. And I'm sure that you were super excited if you saw ultrasound pictures come home and what those ultrasound pictures look like. And when you get those and you first see the little foot, and it's so exciting, and it goes on your refrigerator. Or as that baby continues to grow and you start to get the image of what that baby's going to look like, and whose nose does that baby have? Whose side of the family? And isn't it cool that even after that baby is born, they're sleeping the same way that they were in the womb, the same exact way. And this little baby, now almost at 13 years old, sleeps the exact same way. So why is it that this little baby, actually let me grab this one, this little baby that so many people are so excited to run home and put on the refrigerator counts as a baby that gets to grow into this, that gets to become a stinky hockey player at age 13. But this baby could end up in the trash. Another one. So why is it that at this phase, one baby gets to grow and another baby gets to be left at the mercy of someone else to determine their course? It gets to go to the trash. And I know those are very sensitive topics. There's a lot of things out there that aren't perfect, but there's a lot of awesome organizations out there to provide that support. And I think that we've heard a lot tonight from our community about looking out for the most vulnerable in our population. Some of the most very vulnerable in our population are those women who are in situations that may not be the perfect situation, the perfect family environment. But there's a lot of opportunities right here in Butler County that they can reach out to, but I haven't heard anybody talk about it. Last week or 2 weeks ago, everybody was like, oh, I'm so supportive of adoption, and I'm so supportive of people
Thank you for coming, but your time is up now. You used all of it.
Well, thanks, Mr. Snavely. I mean, but here's the thing, is that I know that you're not just smiles and sweater vests. So.
That was uncalled for. Here's the thing. We treat everybody the same, and we did listen to you, and we listened to everybody, and we give everybody 5 minutes. School board gives you 3. Council gives you 5, and we appreciate you coming, and I think you made your point very well.
So here, I'd like to close on this really quickly. So that there's 2 really great organizations in Butler County that never get recommendations or their information put out there, and that is Pathway to Hope over in Hamilton, and I had the opportunity to tour that facility, and it's absolutely beautiful. We have Oxford Women's Center right here, reaching out to women at the university, to the people that are most vulnerable that need that guidance. So if we're truly here for our people, let's be there for them.
I appreciate
And if
that.
we're truly here to listen, then let's get that input from all of the community before we just look at the latest hashtag on social media or the Huffington Post and then decide that it's time to put a resolution out there for it.
Okay, you've now used 6. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Would anyone else like to address council? Seeing none, we will move to the consent agenda. Can I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved. Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Are there any items to be removed? I think there's only 2 items. Seeing none, all those in favor of approving the consent agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. That takes us to resolutions. First, we have a resolution that will be read by, you know, I led the planning commission for so many years, and I was used to reading off what the resolution was. I sometimes slip into it, so I apologize. Heather, please read the resolution.
A resolution authorizing the city manager to enter into a $225,000 grant agreement with the Ohio Department of Public Safety to engage in and coordinate as lead agency for the countywide OVI task force.
Okay, is there a motion to adopt this resolution?
So moved.
Is there a
Second.
second? Thank you. And I will turn to Chief Jones.
Thank you, Your Honor. Back in the spring, council authorized the Division of Police to apply for this grant. This is our annual OVI task force. Oxford Police serve as the lead agency for this state grant using federal funds for the Butler County OVI task force, which is comprised of 13 different law enforcement agencies. So we were awarded the grant of $225,000. That money will be divided amongst the 13 agencies to run saturation patrols and OVI checkpoints to supplement our highway safety.
Okay, thank you. Would anyone from the public like to address this resolution? Okay, seeing none, we will go to council. Do you have any questions or comments?
Thanks for the grants entrepreneurship.
Yep, absolutely. You ready to vote? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you very much, Chief. You can read the second resolution.
A resolution authorizing the city manager to enter into an agreement with Peter M. Rising to perform consulting services and to function as the Butler County OVI Task Force Coordinator for the 2022 grant funded through the Ohio Department of Public Safety.
Okay, is there a motion to adopt this resolution?
So moved.
Second. And it's seconded. Thank you. Chief?
Yes, thank you. So for this grant, this is a contract with Pete Rising. Pete was a over 25-year employee of the Oxford Division of Police, was a sergeant, and had begun training to be the lead grant coordinator and started to serve in 2015 as that coordinator. And it's kind of very specialized, a lot of administrative work. He was planning on doing that while he was employed with us. He was tragically injured in an accident and had to retire. So we continue using his knowledge as a contractual employee, and this is just continuing that relationship with him.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone from the public who would like to address this resolution? Okay, seeing none. Council?
Such an awesome relationship that we can continue to maintain with Pete, and so
Thank you.
it's fantastic.
Okay. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you, Chief. Resolution is adopted. We'll move to Resolution 3.
A resolution amending the proposed 2023 capital improvements budget to complete our streets and Oxford area trail by updating Oxford transportation plans.
Okay, thank you very much. Is there a motion to adopt this resolution?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. David, do you want to?
Okay, so I'm going to, but the resolution has the kind of the whereases that provide the logic, but I'll provide kind of some of the reasons why I'm introducing this resolution. First, just procedural one, for those of you guys who didn't follow our process. We had an annual retreat that set some of the broad priorities, and then we had a budget meeting about the capital budget, but it wasn't really, it was a work session, so we couldn't really vote on or add seconds or amend it. So a resolution's a good vehicle for doing that rather than waiting until November when we're kind of up against the deadline. The second procedural one is that there were a number of recommendations that came out of the Parking and Transportation Advisory Board that works with transportation planning that kind of emphasize the priorities. So I believe the Board and Commission recommendations deserve an airing, whether we vote them up or down. They just, like, we should acknowledge them. So that's part of the procedural reasons. Some of the logical reasons are we've got a lot going on in transportation right now. We do have a transportation plan in the city of Oxford, but if you look inside of it, our thoroughfare plan was developed in 2007 and is kind of patently out of date in a lot of ways. And it didn't include, really didn't address alternative transportation. So later in 2014, we developed a pedestrian and bicycle safety complete street corridor plan that's enabled us to make a lot of progress in making our community more accessible to all users, but it had like an implementation timeline, but not an implementation mechanism. So our system of pedestrian bike infrastructure is more incomplete than it is complete still. We made enormous progress, but if you ever try to ride across Oxford, you know it's a patchy system. Some other reasons why that's important to us, one of the core priority for us is climate and sustainability, and 26% of our emissions in Oxford come from transportation. So while we work really hard, for example, on buildings and energy, one primary way we can address our carbon emissions is by electrification, and congratulations on Bill on his cool new car, but in other strategies, getting people out of cars and walking and biking and providing alternatives. Another reason is also that our Oxford area trail, when we passed the levy, which runs until 27, with the goal of building this perimeter path, we hit the pause button last year, but if we want to continue to make progress on the trail, we're going to have to get back to the planning. And waiting until 2024 on the budget means then that's even puts us closer to the end of the levy funding. But I also want to put out some kind of strategic reasons. The infrastructure bill is going to throw a lot of money out there for cities to take advantage of to do things related to transportation sustainability. But our transportation plans, we don't really have the cost estimates to go for those dollars. I mean, I think perfect proof of that is the Amtrak. We've been talking about Amtrak for like a decade. But then we got a cost estimate for the platform, and then we were able to secure a $2 million, not yet, but we're on track to secure a $2 million grant. So while I think that like we could wait until 2024 to do this, every year you wait is more dollars you leave on the table. So strategically, I'd prefer to not leave dollars on the table. So then the last set of reasons I want to use are kind of personal. We did that great capital budget planning exercise, and transportation was like a top priority for people. We've said, great, we're going to do that in the 2024 budget, but we didn't ask people about the 2024 budget. We asked them about the 23 capital budget, and they said, please do transportation. So I think there's a people reason, and I'll just end with a very kind of personal anecdote from why transportation and is so critical to the equity goals as well as the sustainability goals. I have a new neighbor named TJ, who I met, who walks to work along Contreras, and he has a seeing eye dog because he's visually impaired. So I didn't walk in his shoes, but I walked half of his commute to work next to him. And it was really eye-opening for me because I can see the ways, and he talked about the ways our community is a great place to live, but, you know, we have neighborhoods where where the sidewalk ends and he has to walk with his dog in the street. Okay. Or, and get this, because we don't have full ADA facilities at Locust Street, he crosses Locust Street by sound. Imagine trying to gauge when to cross Locust Street by sound with cars moving through. So my point with that is a very personal anecdote that I think if we want to complete our streets and our Oxford area trail, we have to have a plan. We have to have cost estimates. And I know it's planned for 2024, but I think it's better to do it sooner rather than later. So we can talk about how we can do that in the budget, but that's the why. So I'll stop at that.
Okay. Do you have any comments, Doug, before I go to the public?
We agree, staff and I agree, we need to update the transportation plan, but we feel that it should be done in 2024. We've got a lot of projects on the table. We've not completed the comp plan. We have a major water softening project. We'll be bidding out phase 3 and 4 of the trail. I mean, I only have so much staff capacity, and yes, we want to update it, but we feel it should be done in 2024. And I shared with council that in order to have a balanced budget, we would probably need to cut some items, and I made some suggestions that I sent out in a memo. I mean, we're feeling that we're going to also need some additional staff if we're to do this and do it right. So we're looking at not 100,000, but 150, 100 for consulting and 50, for the additional staffing. So, the cuts that we are suggesting is, we move the public restroom to 2024 and use the planned $48,000 contribution towards the temporary staff member and planning to assist with this. Of course, the $25,000 from the transportation safety plan that we were proposing in 2023 can be utilized as well. Eliminating the $50,000 from the bike and pedestrian improvements, and then eliminating the $15,000 from the parking garage camera upgrades, and then decrease park repairs by $12,000. So, once again, I don't disagree with what David says. It needs to be done. We just feel that it needs to be done in 2024. I meet with my staff regularly and hear about their staffing needs, and we're not able to address the additional needs, and do a balanced budget. So, I would just ask you to keep that in mind, because once again, we agree. But as I've said before, we can do anything council wants, but we can't do everything. And to front load this, I think, is probably difficult for us.
Okay. Is there anyone from the public who'd like to address this resolution before council? Yeah.
My name is Carla Blackmar, and I live at 400 West Vine Street, and I serve on the Parking and Transportation Advisory Board, as well as Planning Commission. And I do think that we need to have a transportation plan updated. The timing, I understand that we have a limited budget and that there's a lot that we're working with, but I feel like this is one that we do kick down the road to our peril. So I just wanted to suggest I would like to see it front-loaded, and I understand you have many complex, interrelated priorities, so I don't presume to understand the full extent of what you're working on, but I do think it's very critical.
Thank you, Carla. Anyone else? Okay, council?
It's more question than comment, per se, but because I think looking at, Doug, what you've proposed in terms of how we could find that money, there were some that were real tough to resituate. The public restroom, I know, is a really big one, and the parks repairs is a really big one as well. 12,000 is a lot to take away from that. Is this something that we could do? Is there a way to put it as a 2024 unless we find grant funding for this in 2023? Is essentially what I'm asking, to put it simply, is there a grant-based avenue for this, or would this get us into kind of the road of matches and things like that?
There might be also the staff capacity. I mean, I could have put together a much longer list. I mean, the administrative staff is pretty small. You're looking at it in this council chamber for the most part. It's myself, the assistant city manager, Sam Perry, and his planner, and Mike Dreisbach and the engineer. So we got a lot of projects on the table and a lot of balls to keep in the air and make sure we do things right. So that's the thing that concerns me. But, you know, we would, as I said, I will cut these other items if you pass that unless you direct me to make other cuts in the budget. And, you know, I guess we just, we spend a lot of time before we make these recommendations to council. And of course, we have our budget work session on October 20th, and we can further discuss items. But, you know, I appreciate David's concern. Like I said, we agree it needs to be updated. There's no one's questioning that. But it's, you know, it's going to create additional workload for us.
Anyone else?
Well, I think, David, I understand the frustration. Because I know what it's like, for example, with the police commission. When you put a work group together, you work very hard, you make a proposal to council, and you see it come to fruition, as in the case of the social services liaison. And I think that's what you would like to see more with the transportation plan. One of the things I thought about when I looked at the recommendations from the city manager about what could be cut, one of the things you mentioned was that when we had the public input on the budget, transportation was on the list, and so was the public restroom. And I think that's our first time doing the sort of community-based participatory budgeting. And one of the concerns that I have possibly is that if we ask the public for their input and then sort of pull away what they said they were interested in, it would reduce morale or, good faith that when we ask for their input, that we really intend to take it to heart and, might leave the impression that it's just an exercise. And so that's my concern for changing it and taking out some of these things that we know the public voted on.
But I guess so I would say that those are.
Dave?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Hang on, because I'll let you respond to a number of people if you want. Anyone else want to talk? Yeah, Glenn?
To Alex's point, I agree that this needs to be done. I don't think that there's anybody in disagreement with this particular initiative. Right. What we're talking about right now is a function of time. And when I got on the council in 2015, the project I wanted to see through was the water softening project. 7 years later, we're now seeing it through to fruition. Sorry. And my point is, no one is disagreeing that this should happen, but we have initiatives set. The public has weighed in on it. We have weighed in on it. I do agree that it should be one of those projects that if we can find federal funding or some other alternative source of funding, we can look at it, but I don't think we should impact the things that we have set now to do so.
Okay. Did you want to say anything? Jason?
I don't mind what order
I don't care.
So,
I want everybody to.
couple thoughts. I understand we work you guys so hard. We have you going in so many directions. And I don't want to add to that. And also, if we're stretching the budget, while this is a priority and I fully believe in it, I would put the housing situation, particularly the cold shelter, above it. So if we're stretching the budget, I'd rather see from there. But the most intriguing point that you make, because if this comes up next year, I'm absolutely for it. But right now, the most intriguing point, I think, is would doing this now allow us to get grants easier, quicker, and ultimately help our budget going forward? And I think there's a good argument for that, so I'd love to hear staff and management have any thoughts on it.
Well, I mean, if you think of the rail platform, and we were able to get a grant for that, yes, the cost estimate.
Get close to the mic.
Sorry. Well, I was talking about the rail platform, and we were able to get a grant for that through OKI and Jessica's efforts. I don't see that we won't be able to, for example, we've talked about the over or underpass. I think, once we see the funding that's available on it, we can pursue something like that. But I did want to comment on the survey, because that was our first time to get citizen input. And we provided the options, so if you had a chance to read the open-ended questions, there were a lot of other suggestions, like doing more road paving, I think there was a suggestion about doing more for the fire department and so on and so forth. So, we learned from that, because we sort of provided the options, so they were sort of constrained in how they could respond. But, we had thought about doing it for the budget, but we need to think it through before we do, as was suggested here. We're getting their input and then we're ignoring it. That wasn't our intent. It was to help us provide some direction to council. And but it's up to city council. We want to have a balanced budget, and
Okay. Chantal, your turn, if you want to.
I support even this, but I also understand where Jason's coming from with, I am very worried about housing, and I also don't want, I'm a yes and person, so I don't think that transportation and housing need to battle it out. And I'm hoping that's not what happens when we talk about the budget. I think that we can try to make room for both.
Okay, I'll make a quick comment, and then I'd like to give Dave a chance. I'll give you one more.
Okay.
And then I'm going to give Dave a chance, because he started this and needs the opportunity to respond. I think staff has worked hard, as we have said. And in addition to the things that we've been talking about, Jessica's working on the Oats Trail. And that's a big issue for next year, which is a form of transportation. I agree that every single person up here, I think, agrees that this is important. So we're of the unanimous opinion that it's something that needs to be done. I think that the staff has laid things out, and okay, we're going to do this year and that next year, so that their staff will be able to give it the attention that it needs. So I guess right now I'm not persuaded that we should cut out the things that we were going to do and add more to the staff. So that's my feeling right now, but you might be able to talk me out of it. I don't know. Jason?
So I was going to say, again, I know it's not easy to give an answer. You just provide an anecdote for the rails, but obviously it's bigger than that. But if there is a good chance that this would increase our federal money coming our way, it would make sense financially and otherwise to act on it now and not wait. So if there's some good evidence for that, I'd rather support it right now. But also I had a possible alternative solution. Previously, you also set aside money for, I believe, renewable energy is from
For what?
Was it renewable?
Climate action, I think,
Climate
was the
action,
general
and
category.
that's much better because renewables are more specific. That money put aside, I think it was $100,000. This would fall under that in terms of climate action, and would also fall under it for our next one coming up on our agenda. So I wouldn't mind that money going towards other things that are for that goal. I don't know if that would resolve the issue.
Dave?
So what we don't want to do is conflate, there are a few different issues here. This is about the capital budget. This is a response to the capital budget. We'll be talking about the operational budget later, for which staffing is going to be a topic of conversation with us. So I just responded to the capital budget, and we have not yet been presented with the operational budget, and one could have proposals related to that. But I do want to answer a few different things. One is that I think in asking the public, transportation was the top thing. So I don't think we're trading their priority for the public restroom. They were both priorities that the public asked for in the 2023 budget. So that's what that concern was. I do think the idea that and Sam and Jessica, you guys are more experienced in this. If we did a plan that, for example, looked at those corridors that we want to improve to the degree that we had schematic designs, does that get us closer to the grants that might be available? And without them, are we able to apply for the grants?
Yeah, but
And
the
when,
thoroughfare plan is not gonna give you details,
well,
not at that price.
no, well, I think that that's, one of the things that the Parking and Transportation, Board asked for were, identifying the key corridors and developing those kind of 30% cost estimates so you could start pursuing those grants. We can talk about what that contract will buy, but, that's why I think waiting is penny wise and pound foolish is the way to look at that. I would say that the staffing, I'm super sensitive to those issues, which is why in the past we have budgeted for climate action that we hoped could use to hire a part-time climate person. That we've not been able to hire anybody at that level. I don't know, is that $100,000 still in the operating budget?
It is this year, but we've used part of it to do a few things.
You gotta get right up to the microphone.
It is, but we used, I forget the exact amount, to hire a part-time person. And then we also did a project at the fire station, and we did a project, where was the other one, Joe?
That was LED. Both those were last year.
Yeah, okay.
This year we haven't done it.
So it hasn't been expended yet. Is it in the 2023
Not
budget?
totally, like I said, we have a part-time person that is being paid with those funds. I will share with you what we're gonna do. We met today to discuss the second issue, and, we are gonna amend the budget to include a full-time person, climate person, and that'll take that full 100,000, so there won't be any money to use for anything else, but we feel, given the responsibilities and the data that we need to continue collecting, that it's a worthwhile position that we want to fill. So, I wanted to share that with you tonight. So you'll be getting a revision in the budget on that.
That's awesome. And I mean, can we imagine, can we imagine hiring, for example, a sustainability planner for which multimodal transportation were one of their expertise, that they could lean in and help in this sort of work? I mean, we haven't written the job description yet, but. Too soon. But hypothetically, that will help address some of the staff, the climate and sustainability planning issues. That's great news, Doug. And so that to me helps answer the staffing thing. I'm super sensitive to all the constraints and the trade-offs. I recognize that we look at the budget. I don't want to trade off this for pedestrian safety improvements. There's got to be other choices we could look at. And I know that we're fiscally conservative, but what's the total number of, what's the amount on the budget, the unencumbered carry forward, amount on the budget?
You're talking about the fund balance?
Yeah, the fund balance.
As we've mentioned before, we have a healthy fund balance, but we need to have a healthy fund balance. For example, these next two phases of the trail, we haven't bid them out, but they're estimated to be $4.5 million. Well, I can't sign that contract unless I have money in the bank to cover it. We get money back from the grants, but we pay the bill first, so we have to have it there. If we have some sort of natural disaster, we have to be able to pay our staff. So, it's important that we have a healthy fund balance, and we do. And so, we hate to draw on that, because once you start spending more than you bring in, eventually you have to address that. And so we've been very careful here in Oxford to make sure we present council with a balanced budget. And yes, the revenue estimates are conservative, but sometimes they prove not to be conservative. Like if you run into a recession, like we did in 2008, or COVID like we did recently, our income tax revenues took a serious hit.
So my last point is, I view this as an investment. Giving the money that's out there, this is an investment in grant dollars that I think can pay dividends. So I'll stop with that.
Okay.
Doug,
Anybody else?
to your earlier comment, it sounded like you were imagining in 2024 the number would be much higher than 100,000, so
Yeah, we
that it can
talked
be more
about
detailed.
100,000 for the study, and then $50,000 for some additional staffing. Because Sam's group is stretched now, and like I've said before, we've got a lot of work to do yet on the comp plan. We have to present it to the public. We got to then present it to City Council, finalize that. We're hopeful to get that done before the end of the year, but we're already into October, and so I've said enough. It's up to City
Okay.
Council to govern this, decide.
Yep. All right, are you all ready to vote? Okay. All those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say aye.
Aye.
Nays have it, although we said aye. Doesn't pass, but I do think that it's clear that council has that as a priority.
Oh, yeah.
So
And we do too.
if things change, I think it's something worth bringing back up again. Okay, can you read the last resolution?
A resolution amending the proposed 2023 capital improvement budget to expand the funding and scope of renewable energy feasibility study beyond local government operations to meet community-wide energy needs.
Okay, is there a motion to adopt this resolution?
So
So
moved.
moved.
Dave moves it and Chantel seconds. And Dave, I'll give you the floor again.
Okay, well, we'll see if I have any better luck with this one. Climate, again, is a priority for us, and the budget currently contains $30,000 to do a study for the capacity of local renewable energy generation to meet our local government organization needs. But as part of our climate commitment, we're committed as a community to neutrality by 2045, which means that we're going to have to figure out how to get our houses and businesses to zero. And so what a lot of communities are doing are exploring a variety of different ways to do that. Some communities already have their own municipal utilities. Some are doing what they call purchase power agreements, where they're working with people and doing agreements. We use our municipal aggregation to purchase these, whether they're renewable energy credits or whatever they are. But it seems like if we're doing a study in 2023, the opportunity to expand it so we can look at what would it take to power our community renewably, particularly using city facilities. It makes sense to me to expand the scope of that contract rather than do another contract later that starts from scratch again. So that's where that proposal is about.
Okay, thanks. Doug, you have any comments before I go to the public?
Just, what we had put in the budget was, I believe, $25,000 just to look at solar installations on city facilities.
Right.
And so David's suggesting that we expand that. I'm not sure what that, I'm sorry. What we had put in the budget was $25,000 just to look at installing solar on our city facilities. So, whether we can really expand into that and at what price, I really don't know now. I mean, if I could, I just would like to remind the public of the things that we're doing for a very small community. I mean, if you subtract the students, we end up with a full-time population maybe of 7,000 people here in Oxford, and not a huge staff. But in 2021, we converted our 607 street lights at a cost of $350,000, and we reduced our energy cost by 50%. We went with LED fixtures. As we all know, our electric aggregation program for residents and businesses utilizes wind power. And in 2021, customers used 30.7 kilowatt hours, 30.7 million kilowatt hours, and saved a total of over $200,000 from the Duke Energy price to compare. Our city accounts, which includes our facilities and the street lights, we're paying a lower rate than our electric aggregation program. Our electric aggregation program is 5.71 cents per kilowatt hour, but the city accounts, we pay 4.69 per kilowatt hour for our facilities and 3.69 for our street lighting. And that also uses wind power. Our community solar project, which we're working on with BQ Energy, which was acquired by Clean Capital, the plan there is to install a 6 megawatt solar array project on the city's closed municipal landfill. And 6 megawatt facility could power 1,140 homes, or about 18% of our occupied housing units here in Oxford. We purchased an all-electric vehicle last year, and we've, as you know, installed Type 1 electric chargers in the municipal garage. So I think, even though we don't have a lot of big plans, we're moving forward bit by bit. When you're eating elephant, you take one bite at a time, and of course, climate sustainability is a big elephant, but I think Oxford is doing a very, very good job. So,
Do you think that
I'm
we
not
are
sure what
doing-
it would cost to do and what that encompasses, but, a $25,000 increase may not do it, but I don't know until we talk to some consultants.
So do you think we're doing B, but we're not doing A? Is that what I'm hearing?
Let me get the resolution.
A is to conduct a feasibility study. B is to explore the potential of city-owned lands to support renewable energy generation.
I think that's correct.
Okay. Would anyone from the public like to address this resolution? Okay, thank you. Counselors? Jason?
I'm fully in support of this one. I don't think we can go big enough or fast enough within general budget limitations, but we're certainly safe here. On renewable energy, it's a priority personally, but also of the city that we've already established. And I think funds devoted to it now will help, again, with federal money that will be coming in from multiple legislation, not just one that's been passed. And we need to know, not just be ready for it, but know all the options we have at hand, which I think are much larger than we've been exploring. So I am wholeheartedly on board with this.
Okay. Anyone else?
I got a question for Doug.
Yeah.
In our previous discussion of the resolution, you alluded to a new FTE that was gonna be devoted to this. Is that correct?
She could help somewhat. Jessica, do you want to add to that? What's your feeling?
I mean, we would envision that the new sustainability staff person with the job description yet to be created would probably take on the point of contact for a consultant we would hire to do this. Does that make sense?
It does.
Yeah, so we would still need a consultant. The consultant would do all the work. Our new staff person would be their point of contact.
It could help gather data and stuff like that. I mean, once again, we were narrowly focused on solar panels on our buildings and, you know, can the roof support it, you know, so on and so forth. What's the estimated cost to the city? Because we don't get tax credits since the city doesn't pay taxes like a homeowner would get. So, you know, we were narrowly focused on getting that done. It's a lot easier to get it done when things are clearly defined, and this is pretty broad. I mean, we're talking about community-wide, so I believe David has in mind houses, businesses, looking at, you know, thermal, looking at, you know, other options, you know, wind power, solar, so on and so forth. So, you know, that's pretty broad. And,
My concern was just bandwidth, like city employee bandwidth. You know, I was worried about you guys already being at your limit of the things that you can do on a day-to-day basis. So I was concerned about putting an additional thing on top of what we've already discussed here. But if there's going to be a new FTE, hopefully they can be the person that champions this particular initiative. So I'm not so hesitant on this particular one, especially when the spend is, I think it was 25 grand. Like, that one's not horrible in my mind, so I'm okay with that. I was just curious to see if it was going to unduly tax you guys as staff, because I'm actually concerned about your bandwidth.
I mean, we got a lot on our plate. I mean, not just in the environment, but we got labor contracts to negotiate and.
Yeah, I'm just like, well, this new FTE, are they going to start next year? Or are they going to be online next year?
Yeah.
So, okay.
We're gonna put it in next year's budget, but as I
Yeah,
said,
and-
we have a part-time person now.
And this resolution is for next year as well. So hopefully the bandwidth can line up, that they can champion that and not take the bandwidth away from all you guys doing all the other stuff that you already have. That was just my concern.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else?
Well, this increase in $25,000, would it align with, so you made some recommendations for cuts from the previous resolution. Would you have to fund this?
I think we can figure that out. I
Okay.
mean, but I'm not sure exactly what is being asked of us yet. I mean, we'll develop it and probably share it with council to make sure it fits the bill. I mean, there's a lot that can be done in renewable energy and reducing our carbon footprint. I mean, you know, so we have to clearly define to the consultant what it is we want them to study. You know, if you want to have a fixed contract rather than an open-ended one.
Sounds like it's something that would probably not happen at the beginning of the year. It would happen after this environmental person was on staff and able to spend some focused time on it. Yeah, I would think. But I personally, I agree with Jason's comments and Dave's. I think it's something that we just have to have as a priority. And I think this will give focus to this person's new job, and I'm very glad that we're doing the solar feasibility study. I think I've been asking for that before I got on council, so I'm glad to see that finally coming to pass, and it's a good example to you of how long it takes to get things moving through the system. But I think you also see how hard our city staff works, and we are very fortunate to have excellent staff, and they do work hard. But I'm supportive of your resolution.
Thank you. Yeah, again, I think it's going to be, I appreciate that it doesn't include specificity, but I also pulled out some specificity because we were uncomfortable with going too far in terms of specificity. Some communities have done purchase power agreements in which they lease their own land out to a private developer who then takes the tax credits and then sells the energy back to you at a discounted rate. I don't know what but I don't know any more than you do, so let's do a feasibility study with someone who's an expert in this who tells us what our options are. And that's, to me, like, rather than discount what is or isn't possible, let's let an expert tell us. So, again, I'm super happy about this staff person. I would love for us to be in a place where we can say, what are our goals and what does it take to do it? And if it takes more staffing to do the sustainability and the planning stuff we want to do, then let's invest in that. And again, how big was the CIP overall? I mean, it's $20,000, but there were like $200,000 pieces of equipment in there. What was the total amount on the CIP, Doug?
I don't have it in front of me. Let me get it for you.
It's a lot of money.
It was a lot.
It's a lot of money.
It's a
So
lot of money.
$20,000, it could be that we can hopefully find space for it.
Are there further comments? Hearing none, all those in favor of the resolution say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, resolution is adopted. We'll move now to ordinances, and this is first readings for the public, and I'll say this while some people are filing out, so. First readings mean that we discuss it, but we don't vote on it, and we'll vote on it on second reading, which is at our next meeting. But we like to raise most of the issues at first reading. So if you'll read our first one.
An ordinance replacing and repealing section 50501 of the codified ordinances of the city of Oxford pertaining to dogs and other animals running at large.
Okay, thank you very much. Doug?
Yeah, this is just a simple addition to our existing ordinance, basically, which states that keep the dog on a leash not to exceed 6 feet in length upon any public property, including sidewalks and trails, excluding city dog parks, we just have one, or city-sponsored off-leash dog events. For example, at the pool, we had a dog day there, and none of the dogs were on a leash when they were jumping in the pool. So that's what we're suggesting here, and we're recommending that you adopt that at the next meeting.
Okay. Would anyone from the public like to address this ordinance on first reading? Wendy, come on up. No, you have to come up.
I'm not going to address this ordinance.
You have to come up because I know, you know, we're a city that keeps records, and if you're going to talk, you got to come up to the podium. I'm sorry, Wendy. We go way back, and I appreciate it that you didn't want to, but you got to.
I beg of you guys to talk more loudly so that all of us can hear. David, you were great. The rest of you all belong to the mumble core, and it is really frustrating to those of us. I have my hearing aids up as loud as they can get.
Thank you, Wendy.
Thank you.
All right. Would anyone else like to address this ordinance? And we'll do our best to talk right into the microphone. It's difficult. We'll do our best. Thank you for that feedback. We appreciate it. Okay. Any discussion on council?
I had a question. On the language in 50501C, it says, no owner, keeper, or harborer of any dog shall fail at any time to do either of the following. And now that there's a third, can we change that to any?
Yeah.
So I apologize. I was on vacation out of email range last week. This ordinance was added. I looked at it just now. Being that animal patrol falls under the police, would have liked to have had a little more time for some input. But that language is very problematic, I think, because not just a simple thing, because we typically respond to these incidents when there's something happens, like the dog bites something. And I don't think that, I think I'll need to work with the city manager to correct that, because if that dog is on a leash and jumps up and bites someone or, has an incident, I don't think this, we'll have to get with the law director, I don't think this would cover a citable offense, because they did do either of the following. They kept it on a leash. We have had incidents where dogs are on leash and they still cause an incident. So this is a little bit of false sense of security with this. So I think I need to look at some other city ordinances and fix the language. I think for the most, we could do that in the second reading, I believe, but
All right.
just some. How does
I
that fail
had
to
that
allow
marked
you
as
to
well.
cite someone if they bite
well,
a person?
because if they did either of the following, they kept the dog on a leash not to exceed 6 feet in length.
It just says
but
they
they-
shall not fail to do these
I think,
things.
Yeah.
Doug, the problem is two.
There's
It's still
two,
there.
yeah.
Well, no, it needs to be changed to any. And-
Well,
or
keeping the
all.
dog under reasonable control of some person doesn't cut it. Okay, that's the current situation, and so,
Right, that's why we added.
yeah,
keep it
so
on
we
list.
need to replace number 2, I think, with number 3.
I've seen some other language that I think will also address issues of a person of age appropriate and the type of leash and things like that.
Okay,
But I think we can discuss the spirit of the
Yeah,
ordinance.
we need to look at that, because I've been in a situation where my dog was on a leash, and somebody else who claimed that their dogs stayed in their yard and they were under control of the person, ran out, nearly killed my dog, and terrified the hell out of me. I really thought that they were killing the dog, and it was very close. And it was a very costly time. And so just keeping the dog under reasonable control is weak language, and I think that that's what's trying to be changed. I want to acknowledge the people who signed a petition and sent it to council as well, while we're at it, since there wasn't public comment on it. Thank you.
So that's something to be before second.
Yeah, so I think on second, by the time we get to second reading, we'll get that taken care of.
And then how does this, it applies to other animals, so that means no indoor, outdoor cats
Doesn't deal with cats.
It says dogs.
or animals.
Well, it's, we followed it, this is an old ordinance that was adopted a long while ago, and it followed the state, and yeah, it talks about other animals up there, but then it goes
That's
on to
A,
say,
yeah.
C is all about dogs. And I agree that maybe we need to get rid of number 2, because the assumption is that you're gonna have it on a leash, whether or not it's under your
Right.
control or not.
And most communities
Is
have
that what,
that.
you're not?
Oh, no, I mean, I think it's something to be talked about. We know what cats do to the environment. We know they kill a ton of birds just for fun.
Oh, yeah.
They do.
We know that they're not licensed. We know that there are irresponsible owners who do not spay and neuter. We know we have a horrible feral cat problem.
Yep.
That there's really good residents around town that are out of their own pocket taking care of them. So I think that is something that should be, if we're looking at animal population in this town, we should probably talk about cats.
And that would be covered in A, I would assume. And maybe we could just, in the list of horse, swine, sheep, geese, ducks, goats, and turkeys, we might insert cats. Okay.
I have a
So,
question for you.
and that's more guidance than anything.
I have a question for Chief. Do you think you can take care of all of what just got discussed in a couple of weeks?
I'm glad this is the topic of discussion and not other violent crime that we're dealing with in Oxford. But at the same time, I think we can do some more research, and I'll work with animal control. I think there's an issue with cats being considered wild animals under the revised code, but I will look into that and see, because I know right now we do not regulate cats using this ordinance.
There was a paper written from the state of Ohio looking at that,
Yeah.
and because I know there's an issue about, okay, someone was feeding a cat and it was considered wildlife. You're not supposed to feed wildlife, so that was the whole debate. And from my understanding from researching it is that they are not considered wildlife in the state of Ohio.
Okay. Yeah, so
So-
that may be, this is what, the way we've always been told. Certainly there's domestic cats, and then there's feral cats that are running as wildlife.
Yeah, community
So,
cats and.
So we'll work on that issue as well.
The weighty issues that we need to deal with in the city. Any other questions or comments on it?
Just one more thing for Chief Jones. You don't need to apologize for being on vacation. You should be able to go on vacation.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think the one thing I want to say is I know this is a very important issue in the community, and I've been hearing a lot of people talking about calling the cops on other people because of, dogs on leash. Dogs not on leashes, and I understand there are situations that might be dangerous. I also think we should be considerate of the bandwidth of our officers, and also just consider that we can communicate with each other, and everything doesn't necessarily have to immediately go into calling 911 or calling the police to solve interpersonal issues. I know sometimes people do not behave well, and sometimes it might be escalated to that, but I would encourage the community not to make that the first go-to if they see something that they're uncomfortable with.
Hopefully this is mostly informational.
Hopefully.
People in Oxford are pretty good about following reasonable rules, so we'll hope for the best on that, I guess.
Yeah, if
Could
people were
you-
angels, we wouldn't need laws, though, right?
Could you read the second ordinance, please?
An ordinance amending Chapter 935, Trees, Shrubs, and Other Plants by adding Section 935.191, Managed Natural Lawn Area.
Okay. Do you want to talk? It's not a motion, yeah.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah. Do you want to talk about it first?
Yeah, I mean, it's something we've already talked about. It basically helps to expand a little bit more, so clarify what people can do in their yards in terms of native flora, and to help out pollinators. There's not too much to it. It's just sort of clarifying things, because there's been a lot of confusion in the public, and this sort of lays out things for us.
And it has to be managed. You
Yes,
can't just let it go.
Which is definitely in there.
It is, yeah. Okay. Is there anyone from the public, or Doug, did you want to add anything before?
No, we had a work session on this, and there's nothing to prevent someone from having a non-traditional lawn now. So, but maybe this can help promote it. I wanted to share with you, though, we are working on public information to get out, to help people understand, what they can do. So, I'm not opposed, staff and I aren't opposed to this, but I wanted the public to know that there's no restrictions now. I mean, I have different vegetation in my lawn area, garden area, that's certainly over 10 inches, and I've never been asked to cut it.
Okay.
Ornamental grass that I'd like to get rid of, that's over.
Thank you, Doug.
So, yep.
Anyone from the public like to address this ordinance? Yes, come on forward. Name and address, and you get 5 minutes.
Steve Sullivan from 104 Marty Court. Geographically, Ohio is in a place of privilege both in the United States and the world because of our proximity to about 20% of the Earth's fresh water. But nevertheless, Ohio's Oxford streams run dry too. Even without that particular fact, it's in our best interests to create and to promote, as Doug points out, ecologically sustainable neighborhoods. Oxford is already steadily increasing our sustainability thanks to great proactive things from the City Council, creative methods from our Public Works departments, and of course, great support from our citizens. And I'm especially thankful in this and in many other issues for having such a trustworthy and proactive City Council in all kinds of issues and resolutions that you pass. So thank you for promoting that and making us aware that, you know, we could do this anyway, but we want to talk about it more. Over the past several years, there have been a number of ad hoc and otherwise formal and informal committees that have tried to promote a whole package of eco-friendly resolutions. And as Doug pointed out earlier, it's important to eat the elephant one bite at a time, as it were. And part of the reason that it's taken so long for us to get to these points is that we tried to create packages that cover everything. And so part of what we're doing is not just allowing people to be able to create eco-friendly lawns, but also to be, quote, pollinator-friendly, and to set examples for the city to create these eco-friendly zones. So this ordinance is a pretty simple step for Oxford, especially if it's largely already allowed. But through this ordinance, we will remove at least an implicit barrier that has prevented landowners from being ecologically responsible for their landscaping. As somebody who, pretty much since I moved into the community, has been involved in some of these committees, I've heard story after story from local landowner who says, well, I tried to do this and I was prevented basically by code enforcement. And sometimes this is just a misunderstanding in various ways, and so this will just clarify things and make it easier, and people can be more proactive. Not only that, but the monocultural lawn is a stylistic relic of times when people wore top hats, and a weird amalgam of that time, along with post-World War II, better living through chemical application type attitudes. And just like there are relatively few people here wearing wide collars and bell-bottom pants, it's about time for us to think about changing our styles of our neighborhoods. Certainly there is a place for a carpet-like lawn, but it's not necessary to carpet our neighborhoods. We can do other things with our neighborhoods. Soccer fields are a great example of a reason to have a carpet-like lawn. But a wide range of studies show us that neighborhoods that have biodiverse plant life simply make people happier, healthier, they heal faster, they feel younger, they feel more affluent. $7,000 per big tree in your yard, you'll feel that much richer, 10 years younger. Biodiverse plantings increase other biodiversity, including the insects and other animals that prey on pests. A yard without dragonflies is a yard where the mosquitoes reign free. And a yard that doesn't have a plethora of lightning bugs is a yard that's missing out on one of the sublime aspects of living in the Midwest. Similarly, a managed natural lawn area will provide ecosystem services like reduced runoff, pollution, and flooding that will benefit the city's bottom line. With the managed natural lawn ordinance, Oxford gives residents the freedom and promotes the idea of creating an experience like this on their own land. So I encourage the City Council to pass this ordinance, even if it is simply from a promotional perspective. Now, I have heard in conversations with some people that there's been a question on how to create an enforceable bright line on this. And so one of the suggestions is to simply require people, whether through discussions with code enforcement or actually in the ordinance, to say you have to have a plan that lists a handful of species and then shows material progress to this across a season or 3 seasons. And while there could always be some random absentee landlord that wants to say, hey, I'm not mowing the lawn and it's because of this ordinance, show me the plan. If you show me the plan, great. And some of us will show up and help you execute that plan if you're really having that hard a time. To that end, we have students such as AJ and others here who are already creating websites that are designed for the person that has a few $100s and goodwill and no other expertise so that this can be executed efficiently. So I think it's something that Oxford can do, it's something that we can lead in, and it's something that our citizens really want. Thank you.
Thank you. You had 7 more seconds, but yeah. Go ahead, Carla.
That's a hard act to follow, but I'm Carla Blackmar, I live at 400 West Vine Street, and I just wanted to also speak in favor of adoption of this resolution. I think that I have been cited for having a lawn, I'm embarrassed actually to admit, which just shows how much I've drunk the cultural Kool-Aid, but I have been cited for a lawn that was over 10 inches long, And and that was actually in the last year. So it is something that is being kind of casually discouraged in our current code enforcement procedures. I can send you the email. And so, and it wasn't a citation, but perhaps it was a warning in the way that we do for code enforcement. And so it's just to say, I think this is lowering a barrier to the ecological practices we know we need to adopt. I think that the language is fairly simple. I agree about the addition, asking that there be a plan for how this is going to be done, because that allows us to enforce it quite simply. Do you have a plan? Show us the plan. If they have a plan, then code enforcement can back off. And I think that just makes it something that doesn't come down to like careful refereeing on the part of code enforcement for this resolution, and I think that would be a good thing. So just want to say that I'm in favor of this and the general direction of having more pollinator and ecologically friendly yards in Oxford.
Thank you, Carla.
Good evening. My name is Peggy Branster. I live at 18 Meadow Circle, and I come to you now tonight wearing my Audubon hat. Audubon has had a international program of promoting natural vegetation, and when I first got with Audubon, didn't quite see the point and the connection until somebody explained to me that every baby bird, including birds from seed-eating parents, are fed insects as infants. And the insects will grow if we have native plants. Non-native plants do not support native insects. They do not support our birds. So what we are trying to do, in part, is to get more insects, not only for pollinator insects, but other insects, because if you like birds, you can't be destructive of insects. They're part and parcel of the same thing. So Audubon members are very supportive of more natural plants. We have done several plantings in Oxford already, one at the OCAC, where there's a pollinator garden. So we've been trying to promote that informally. There is a group of citizens who have gotten together, or are getting together Thursday again. I hear in the past we've had several citizens groups promoting native plantings that have kind of come and gone, and they're trying to come back again, and I don't know what'll happen. But I know there is some concern about added staff time for enforcing this ordinance, and I think there's maybe an opportunity to get volunteer help with some of those. I think we can find people to look at plans and assess plans, and I think probably some of the Audubon Miami Valley people would be happy to be involved in that effort so that we don't put extra effort on our staff time, because that is not the intent of this ordinance or of people who are in favor of native plants.
Super.
Thank you.
Thank you, Peggy. Anyone else? Yes, sir. You're next. And then I'll go to the back.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me all right through the mask? Awesome. My name is Antonio Alejandro. I live in 231 Western Drive, and I'm in support of this code. So obviously we've had a lot of people come up here already and talk a little bit about it, but I'm going to further emphasize that point, particularly about how this small addition in the city code will greatly benefit Oxford. Now, these zones in general will help create a better habitat and a resource area for our pollinators, which will then in turn increase the pollination or the pollinator amount here in Oxford. And that increase in pollinators will lead to greater flower and crop fertilization, better helping our agricultural sector. And then furthermore, the increase in pollinators will help our health and our ecosystem and our environmental system here in Oxford. And then furthermore, these zones can actually lead to an increase in property value, as these zones will help prevent erosion from water runoff in the backyards. And just having this code, we're essentially doing more by doing less, and I see no reason for us not to do less in this instance. Yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Antonio. Appreciate it.
Hi, Jerry Carlton, and I live at
602 Melissa Drive. I can't be as eloquent as some of the previous speakers, but I just want to put a plug in for No Mow May. It does the things that we were talking about, leaving room for pollinators and for natural things to grow. It comes from England. I did it this spring, and I have to tell you, it was a lot of fun. I just let my grass grow, and little flowers came up in between, and there were bees flying around, and then my lawnmower man had to come and cut it back. But it was fun, but I was told that somebody from the city had come around and was asking my neighbors, well, I think first she was asking if there was anybody in the house dead because the lawn was grown so high. She said she would have cited me, except that my neighbor told her that it was only for the month of May. That's all you do, just let it grow for a while, let the bugs be free, let the butterflies fly, and that's the end of it. So it's a real simple way. It doesn't require any planning or any kind of big deal. It's just a fun thing. It was like walking through a field. It was fun.
Super.
That's all I have to say.
Okay, thank you very much, Jerry. Welcome.
John Ralnowski, 3 Peabody Drive. I'm in favor of this ordinance, and I'd love to see it in place. I think turf has its place, but it doesn't have to be everywhere. So let's have a little diversity in our landscapes. Thank you.
Super, thanks, John. You're next, yep.
Good evening.
Welcome.
Steve Gordon, 5289 Hillcrest Drive. I hope I'm not disqualified because I live in Oxford Township. Very brief comment. Councilor Bracken, I thought the proposed ordinance, the way it's drafted, is very well written, and thank you for your good work. I just had a couple of thoughts that you might want to think about as you go through the next 2 weeks. It appeared in the draft ordinance that there was a segment in there about restricting or limiting use of pesticides in the managed natural areas. It might be interesting to think how much pesticide is placed on our current turf grass in the community. So I wouldn't want to see the managed natural area as the only one where there's guidance suggesting or recommending very limited use of pesticides. The other thing that I know that has been an issue where I work at the McGuffey House and Museum is in the wintertime, many times these managed natural areas and pollinated gardens start to appear a little unkempt. And from what I've read in various Audubon sources, Peggy, and from Doug Tallamy, is that a lot of these old seed heads provide seed for birds in the wintertime. The seed starts softening, and then you will see finches and other birds come into your echinacea and other plants for food. The other issue, though, related to that is sometimes they can look pretty unkempt and kind of are they ever going to deadhead those flowers? You know, your impulse is to want to deadhead them. So I don't know if that might be, maybe there's something you can put in language on that. But I want to thank the council again for considering this important ordinance, and I support it.
Thank you, Steve. Anyone else like to address council on this ordinance? Thank you all. We appreciate it very much, and I will turn it to council for discussion.
And I just want to give credit where credit's due. While I contributed to the crafting of this legislation, so did many people, the Environmental Council, some people who stepped up and spoke tonight, and also staff and management also helped to craft it. So I contributed, but this is by no means just my work.
Thank you for clarifying. Yep.
I think this is a wonderful resolution, and I'll just, my husband and I, we've been planting more natural plants in our yard. We got rid of all the honeysuckle, and it's amazing to see what's popping up. There's pokeweed, there's all kinds of things that are native that birds are taking advantage of. And we have a wildflower garden right up against the creek, right by our house. And lest you think that you just let your lawn go and these wonderful things happen, it does take some work. I mean, we planted the wildflowers. We had an aphid infestation this spring. A lot of the flowers didn't bloom the way we wanted them to. And to Mr. Gordon's point, in the late fall, we do have, they look like just brown sticks right up along the creek. but we do see birds coming and eating the seeds. And my husband did an experiment where he cut down some of the wildflowers and left some of the wildflowers untouched and just to die. And this spring they looked exactly the same. It really didn't matter, so he decided this year he's not going to do the work to cut it all down. He's going to let the birds enjoy them, and then in the spring we'll have new flowers. We'll have to figure out the aphid situation. But I think it would just, the neighbors enjoy it. They walk by our house, they comment on it. I think it adds real character to a community, so I'm excited about this.
Thank you, Amber. Anyone else?
So if I could, yeah, I think that for those of you guys who were here, maybe weren't here, we had a work session and we went back and forth on the idea, was this just something that was implied with our current code, and do you really need an ordinance to do this work? And the answer was it probably is permissible within our current ordinance. But I think that for all the reasons we've talked about today, some explicit guidance about, yes, explicitly, yes, you can do it, but also limiting, like, no, this doesn't just mean letting your lawn grow. This isn't just a no-mow strategy. This is a more or less a native restoration strategy. You have to have a plan, I think is good. And I think in general, I really do appreciate all the work that the Environmental Commission and the persistence that went into crafting this legislation. I think that it's pretty tight, and I think that it may be slightly more complex for the staff to enforce, but I think it also provides more guidance for staff, which I think could help in these ambiguous situations. So I'm in support of this. I am going to propose, and I've shared with staff a couple of small amendments to this that I think will help in line with what people are saying here. Is that one of the things is that I do think it's kind of like it would be, I think it's hard to put the burden of proof on the inspector to come in and determine what is this, like what are these species, what. So to me, the simpler thing is, and I have language in here that would be in that last section E would maybe read compliance instead of failure to maintain. That, and I can introduce this formally next time, but you might say it shall be the burden of the responsible property manager to prove compliance with this ordinance by demonstrating a plan for planting and maintenance of the managed natural lawn area. And I don't think we need to specify in the code. The other thing we need to do is not load the code up with things that can be provided as general guidance on a website or something. So I think saying a plan is enough, but we could provide guidance on the website of what that means. Is it a receipt from the native plant nursery? You went to, Shade Makers, and here's what you bought, and here are the seeds, and this is what your plan is. I think that
Always
could
go
be
to
enough.
Shade Makers.
What's that?
You always go to Shade
Yeah,
Makers.
we always go to Shade Makers. So I think that could really, I think that could really help with when a neighbor complains, and if a code enforcement officer, it is kind of, you have to have a plan, because native restoration does not just happen. It's really a complicated project. It's messy, it takes time, and it takes persistence. So I'm in support of that. I'm going to propose that amendment.
I think if Jason's okay with it as the maker of the motion, it can just be incorporated for second reading.
Okay. So what I was going to follow up with after everybody spoke was saying I would love staff to come back to us, and if they like the idea of the management plan amendment, and actually yours too, excuse me, in terms of the compliance instead of failure to maintain, that would be fine with me upon second round.
Okay.
And I'd like to get your opinion on it.
If you could send us the specific language.
And the other thing I would suggest is that I do think the code is not a place for public education. Code is a place for something that can be enforced. And so, for example, there's a whole section in there about pesticide use, and I don't see A, how it's enforceable for staff, and B, it may be deeper in the weeds than, that something like that might be better in public education. We're going to have robust public education, but I know the city's working on it, and I'm helping out with that. So I want to appreciate the work that people put into this.
Jason?
I was just going to say, I wouldn't mind that either, but just to point out for the public who haven't read all this, it says pesticide use shall be minimized, so it's not a flat restriction. It's more of a suggestion, which is education, which I think is good, but if it's complicating the legislation, then that's fine with me to adjust as necessary.
Okay. So if the two of you would give your feedback to Doug this week so that he can make those changes, or early next week.
And I can definitely do that. I just want to let the public know that this is not something that is a hard line on pesticides. It's more of a suggestion, and so that wouldn't be a compliance issue.
Okay. Anyone else?
To David and Amber's point, we already discussed this. There's prior art. I agree with the spirit of the ordinance. I think it's better suited as a resolution and an information campaign because of the contentious nature of the pesticide issue.
Okay. Thank you, Glenn. If there's no other discussion, we have no second readings, and so I will move to number 7, announcements.
Can I just say a special thank you to AJ because he did a lot of background work. So I know that people have been working on this for decades, but you were able to put pen to paper. I'm not sure how much, I don't know, I think Steve would agree with that, or maybe the two of you, but thank you so much. So it's really exciting to see this come to fruition.
Super, thank you. All right, so now we'll go to announcements and communication, and I'll begin with City Manager Elliott.
Just a couple quick things. A reminder that we have our budget work session October 20th here, and
You're gonna have to talk right up to the mic.
hello. Just a reminder that our budget work session is October 20th here in this building. And I also wanted to just share a few things about our deer management program, which we've been doing since we implemented the program back in 2009. So the opening hunting date with bow and arrow in our region is from Saturday, which is already passed, September 24th, to February 5th. And as you know, we certify hunters to hunt on 7 tracks within the city, 5 city-owned and 2 others. And so the total permitted bag limit in our county is either 3 either sex deer. So once again, this is the 14th year for the program. Deer are donated to the Community Meal Center in Hamilton, Ohio. The center provides meals to the needy each week on Tuesdays and Fridays. And the processing cost for the donated deer is paid for by a grant funded from the state of Ohio. So our goal with this program is to restore the natural balance in our ecosystem and not to eliminate white-tailed deer. And of course, to be successful, we've said many times before that we need to continue the program. So I just wanted to let people know if they do see hunters out there on these 7 tracts of land, 5 city-owned and 2 privately owned. And that's all I have this evening, Your Honor.
Okay. Chief, okay. Joe? Chief Deathridge? Okay. Casey? I can always count on Casey. That's great. Welcome, Casey.
I'll get real close. So I have 2 announcements tonight. One is our full-time sports coordinator, who we've been waiting on, is starting on Monday. So we're excited about that. Her name is Tori Magner. She lives here in Oxford. She moved here earlier this year. So we're really excited about what she can bring to our team. Number 2, are you going to talk about Oktoberfest? Because I will let you. I just want to make sure it got talked about. Okay. So this Saturday is Oktoberfest, the first ever Oktoberfest, which I think
We could call it first annual.
First annual, sorry. Which the idea came from council, correct? Yeah. So here, this is just us responding to you. But actually, it's Jessica and her team, and Seth and the work that they're doing, the Chamber of Commerce and Enjoy Oxford and of course, there's a whole plethora, I think, of organizations who are jumping in on this. But it's from 1 to 10 on Saturday in the Uptown Parks. All kinds of kids' activities, a band, Stein holding contests. I don't know. Jessica can talk more about whatever I miss here. But in addition to that, what's probably getting missed that we're adding to it is the 1869 vintage baseball games are coming to the park on Saturday as well. So from 12 to 4, you can stop out there if you want to see true 1869 style baseball played. And then some of those players are coming uptown from 5 to 6 and doing a little competition and storytelling kind of thing in the parks from 5 to 6 uptown. So if you see people walking around in weird looking outfits, they're just 1869 baseball players. So, thank you.
Or they're attendees in their lederhosen and their dirndls.
Could be that. You'll probably see me in a weird outfit. We're just going to fit in.
I can't wait to see it. Thank you, Casey. Appreciate it. Sam?
I just wanted to announce the November 16th date for the open house for the Oxford Tomorrow Comprehensive Plan. It's the evening. We'll have more details on exact time and location, but it's been a 1.5-year project that we've been working on with a consultant, and that'll kind of set the course for land use, transportation, housing, all the various goals that we have over the next 10 years. So
November 16th. Okay, thank you. Jessica.
Good evening. So my update might be a little longer, but I want to address kind of what we're doing with housing. But before that, I do want to acknowledge to those who are listening on the live stream that we are sorry for the AV difficulties. For those in the audience, whenever you see that TV flicker, it means our live stream is flickering. And so I'm getting texts from people saying like, I can't hear, I can't see, and we know. So we're having a meeting. We have put out an RFQ for an AV equipment provider. We're meeting with them in October to review what we can do to upgrade this system because we clearly need it. So our apologies. Also, just wanted to give an update about housing. So we have one, I just want to acknowledge that we acknowledge that there is a housing crisis, not only in the United States, but also here in Oxford, Ohio. And so we hear that. And I'm going to go ahead and do this full report so the public can hear what's going on. And then we also plan to turn this into a blog on our website that will be published soon. So the City of Oxford Council has made affordable housing its #1 priority. This was adopted in 21 and then reaffirmed in 22. And so when council does that, staff really gets to work. Like, so what are we going to do? And so I want to let people know that annually, the city provides $48,000 from the general fund to the Family Resource Center to assist with their programming, including housing programs. Like some are set aside, some of those funds are set aside just for housing. With the onset of the pandemic, the city was awarded both CARES funds and then later the American Rescue Plan funds to help with issues that COVID exposed. And homelessness and housing crisis was one of those. These were one-time federal programs, and so with the release of these funding, we were asked to create sustainable programs. And so in 2020, we actually used our general fund to give an additional $74,160 toward a cold shelter for the Family Resource Center. In 21, we gave the Family Resource Center $177,000 of CARES funds for the following programs: cold shelter, transitional housing program, housing case management, child care assistance, transportation assistance. The Family Resource Center staff was able to help numerous clients stay housed because of that assistance, and also was able to find permanent housing for 13 families who were formerly unhoused. I was really impressed with them. They took the program further and worked with the county and self to provide rent assistance to tons of families. I don't have an exact number, but I know it was a lot. That was in 21. In 22, CARES is gone now. There is no more CARES fund. And now we're looking at the American Rescue Plan dollars. And so with those dollars, we were especially told by the the funds, like, this better be sustainable. And so what we did is we have provided $73,000 to the Family Resource Center this year, like right now in 2022, for the purpose of their programs and housing. They have been our partner in implementing the cold shelter, and I think they've done an exceptional job, and I hope they can continue it. At the same time, council has indicated that they want us to kind of dedicate our American Rescue Plan funds to long-term solutions for housing. I'm going to say these are really gnarly and complicated topics, and so we've been really doing a lot of research on best practices and what can we do that's sustainable. To date, we have utilized $150,000 to acquire land for the cottage home community to assist with housing of low-income individuals. We've released an RFQ to find a housing nonprofit partner. Our goal is to have a new housing nonprofit partner that we can work with so that when we acquire property, they can manage it and keep the rent reasonable and provide housing education programs and things like that. We are also researching in conjunction with that. We're actively researching properties that can be purchased to be either renovated or then built on for new affordable units in the city of Oxford. The nonprofit partner would then be our manager of that property. So we're actually going to be bringing some to you in the near future so that all this stuff is like in process. And then finally, we're researching how to establish a community land trust model and invite developers in to build affordable and workforce housing for Oxford residents. I just went to a conference on this all day yesterday, and I was like, my mind is blowing. But anyway, it's really exciting stuff. The goal is to use those remaining American Rescue Plans funds for these long-term solutions, because this really is probably a once-in-a-generational opportunity to have funding of this magnitude to do this type of programming. there will be no additional source of federal funds coming to the city, so we kind of have to find a way to keep these things going. So to do that, I want to kind of talk about what are we doing going forward and looking at 23. So this year we established, well, that's not true. A while ago, we established a short-term rental tax on things like Airbnb and Vrbo. I'm going to be honest, this was a big lift. It was a lot harder than we thought, but we've got it started and we're getting that tax coming in. And our goal is that those funds can be set aside for housing and we should have some money by 23 to actually allocate toward housing programs. And then second, we have committed to using the county CDBG funds for housing programs. So that grant is actually due in November. So I'll be coming to you in the next council meeting, probably for permission to apply, right? And then our goal is to then use that allocation toward housing programs in 23. So we apply in November 22 for 2023 funding. And then the idea is that we'll do that year after year after year. So I just want to say that we are committed to finding sustainable housing solutions in our community. It's slow and hard work. I also want to say I'm so grateful that we live in a community where, you know, there's that saying where like a small committee of people or who gets things done. I mean, they're more eloquent. But here in Oxford, people get things done. And so I really want to encourage our community to continue to help us solve this housing problem. And whether that's contributing to existing nonprofits who are already doing this work, if it's helping these nonprofits look at other funding sources like United Way, Oxford Community Foundation, local civic clubs. I mean, there are other organizations who help too. And so I think by working together, we can probably start to chip away at this really big problem. So thank you.
Thank you, Jessica. Do any counselors have questions for Jessica? I'm really thankful that you gave that rundown because it is our top priority and it is something that we've been spending a lot of our time on, and it's not always clear to the public everything that staff is working on. So I appreciate your report.
So would a cold shelter be kind of an eligible expense for CDBG money from the county?
My intent that I hope to draft for you, so it's still in very much draft form, would be funds to go toward the existing cold shelter model, and then the other portion of those funds to go toward one of these more acquisition of property likely, to then continue to try to build our base of affordable housing that can be rented. So a little bit of both is my plan.
Super, thank you very much.
How much does the cold shelter cost for 4 months? It's 4 months at a time, right?
Yeah, we generally do like November to March, and I believe it's about $30,000 to $40,000. And so that's where we just recently gave them $25,000 to try to help with either the case management or implementation. I mean, honestly, if they want to pivot how it's used, it's fine as long as it's still used for housing.
Okay, thank you. All right, Heather?
Nothing, thank you.
Okay, Chris?
I may something that say something that a counselor might say, but I have had a reason at home to look at it, which is in 6 days is the end of the ability of one to register to vote in Ohio. There's 3 ways to do it: in person by going to the local election office, one can do it online, and one can do it by mail if it's postmarked October 11th. So none of this happens unless people vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. You now said that, I don't have to say it.
Neither do I.
Glenn? Okay.
I was actually going to say the same thing, but I was going to target it towards the student population that we have here in Oxford.
Say something to my daughter, please.
A lot of students don't know this, but because you have housing here in Oxford for the majority of the year, you are eligible to register here to vote. So I highly recommend anybody who has an interest in their civic duty here in Oxford, please go out and register to vote. And I'm also extremely excited for this Saturday and the Oktoberfest.
Agreed. I'm also very excited for Oktoberfest. You will find my dad, my husband, and I there. I will also be reading ghost stories, I think around 6 o'clock uptown to help give the band a break. So if you didn't get enough of me talking today, I encourage you to come check that out. I also wanted to extend, again, my apologies for missing last meeting. It's a real bummer to have to miss meetings in general. I like being up here. And then I also wanted to address one of our public comments earlier. I think that, before the resolution, that was a real missed opportunity to do one of our living room conversations. But I will say, I will speak on behalf of Councilor Franklin and I when I say we too are excited to do those. And I will stop speaking on behalf of Councilor Franklin and I'll speak for myself when I say, we're nearing our first full year on council, and it has been a learning curve. So you go from work-life balance to work-council-life balance. And so we have our meetings that we come to, we have our boards and commission meetings that we also have to attend, and then we try to work in those extra times to interact with the community. And so that's not an excuse by any means, but please know that we are still excited about that initiative. It is coming, and a goal for us to do in our second year on council. So thank you all, and I look forward to seeing you on Saturday.
Thank you, Alex.
I know we all got the invitation to the Stepping Up initiative that happened a couple Fridays ago. I saw John Jones in the room. That was you, right? You're the John Jones I think of, so I figured you were there. I thought it was amazing. I mean, it was such it was a huge group of people. From our Butler County Sheriff was there, a bunch of judges were there, old Supreme Court justices, a lot of people representing nonprofits, Board of Education. And the Stepping Up initiative is something that Governor Kasich had started when he was in office and has been carried through with DeWine. And it is meant to try to address the problem of mental health that is basically, prisons can't fix mental health, right? To sum it up in a nutshell. And it's trying to figure out from a wraparound services, what can we do to try to fix the systemic underlying root problems? And really looking at what can you do for juvenile justice. If you have kids that are coming from a very traumatic household and maybe they don't have housing and their parents don't have any child care, they're not able to go to school, they're hungry, how can you try to break that cycle? So I'm really excited to join the Attorney General's Task Force on Juvenile Justice. To look into what we can do from an Oxford standpoint when we try to address childcare going forward, whether that's our zoning for our at-home daycares, whether it's looking at having a daycare that is associated at, stuff like a 2-generation system at the senior center, looking at universal pre-K, getting another Head Start in town that had previously left town. All of those things are going to be very crucial. And to the people in the room who came and are still here, that came to speak about the cold shelter, they're very active, as y'all can tell. This is only a subsegment of those people, but there's many different groups from the county level and from the city level that are really worried about the cold shelter. And it's not even an arbitrary deadline, it's the fact that it's becoming cold. So I think that the money, and again, I'm super frugal, and I want to know, okay, if we're going to have $40,000 or so every single year for this cold shelter, what can we do to maybe have a financially more feasible model that might be more sustainable? So I think that is the point of these groups, to try to imagine what can we do to make this a reality, because we know this homelessness is not going away and that families are cycling in and out of it. So what can we do to try to help those families get permanent housing and really capture those kids? This is not something that any child has asked to go through and nor should go through. So I'm really looking forward to working with these groups because they have so much energy and they are not going away, and winter is coming, so there is a pretty firm deadline that are lighting everyone up to act now.
Thank you, Chantal. Amber?
Well, I hit a milestone last week. Monday, it was my birthday, the big 5-0, and I want to take this opportunity just to share my gratitude with the community. There are these milestones in life that make you reflect. Time's going, everyone's getting older, and we have to seize the day. And I'm just grateful for this community for allowing me to call this home for the last 11 years and many years to come. Living room conversations, there is one happening next week, and this actually was initiated by a student group. Their advisor had reached out to me. There's a student group that's interested in being have more community engagement. And I pitched the living room conversations idea, and they're on board. So I'm excited to do that as a pilot. Also, I attended the Interfaith Center opening. They're back in person. I have been talking about living room conversations, not for 2 years. I've only been on council for less than 1, but it's been 14 months. And between summer break and COVID and masking, people have been a little bit reluctant. But now we have community centers open again and organizations willing to be involved. And so I'm looking forward to doing that more, partnering more with Councillor French. We know we have people in the community who've expressed interest, and we're looking forward to moving forward with that. One more thing for our city manager, I wanted to address a comment that we got in public comment about the number of vape shops in our community, and I was hoping maybe you could speak a little bit to the power council does and does not have to regulate some of these.
I don't really have enough information to comment on it now.
Okay,
Go ahead, Jessica.
please.
So this is one of those behind the scenes things that I haven't even told Doug about it yet, guys. So, but I've been meeting with the Oxford Amy Masesco with the Oxford Coalition for Healthy Community. And also the Butler County General Health District. And we are looking at a kind of a licensing program for people who sell any sort of tobacco product. And then that license fee then pays for enforcement through the health district. So the health district would be the one who would monitor this, support this, enforce it. So that's one thing that we can be doing, and it's very much in the early phases, because I was trying to understand, well, what action would council take, if any? Why couldn't the health district just do this? And then they had to explain to me why. And so it's in the process of what we could possibly bring forward. And I don't know if you have any else.
Just moratorium.
Yeah.
The zoning code is
So-
cool.
Yeah.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you, Amber. Jason?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that the concern over the cold shelter, which obviously I'm very concerned about, but that shouldn't take away from the stuff that the city has been doing on housing. They have taken it very seriously. Our staff has done wonders, and there's lots of great things in the works. And I'm really proud of that and really happy that we've made that much progress, and there's a lot more to be had. But of course, the cold shelter remains an issue, and so we can care about all those things and hopefully move forward on both aspects of it.
Okay, thank you,
So
Jason.
I just
David?
would like to also, like Councilor Franklin, thank the members of the public who have been so engaged in some of these agenda items that we've had. Sitting on council is kind of interesting because people look to us with the big ideas and the hopes and the aspirations, but it turns out like we only have a midway role in this process. That the city manager is the one who has, is presenting the budget and staff is executing it, and so it can be sometimes difficult to go between the ambitions of what people are hoping for from government and the realities of what the limits are. And so I think but what really helps in a community of educated people, where you can have like conversations about what the challenges are, the kind of the conversations I've had with people about this native martial law ordinance, we're very understanding and trying to grapple with the challenges of staff, and what if we did this instead? And I think that's ideally the way governance could work, which is like you talk like grown-ups about how hard it is to accomplish the goals. It doesn't mean that like, oh, it can't be done, so we can't do it. You have a frank conversation about what's possible and not possible, and you try to make the trade-offs, and you try to put your money and your ordinances where your mouth is as best you can. But it's hard. People often look to me, but like, I've got limited control over the budget, obviously. But we try to do the best we can, and we're doing a good job, I think, over the most part, trying to translate really broad ambitions into meaningful, measurable progress, money. So thanks to everybody for being engaged and patient and understanding of how that process, the sausage gets made. So.
Okay, thanks, Dave. Thanks to everyone who came today, whether you spoke or not. We appreciate you being here. And I think most of everybody spoke very eloquently, and we listened. We don't always agree with everybody, especially if it's controversial. There's both two sides of it. But we do listen to you, and it does make a difference that you're here, and we thank you for it. I just wanted to say that I'm very much in favor of the cold shelter. I think that is an essential thing that we need to get done. And so we'll be having that conversation, I'm sure. And I want to recommend that everyone, put on a jacket, come up next Saturday and enjoy this festival. It's all uptown, and they're closing off the street, they're doing all kinds of things, and I think it's gonna be a ton of fun, and everybody's gonna be there, and you wanna be there too. Just enjoy being in Oxford and having a good time with your neighbors, and I think that's what it's about. That's all I have, and so I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Good night. Thanks again for coming.